Get the hell out of our way! Go! Thank you, thank you, thank you. No! Out there! Good job! Yeah, thanks, partner!
Hey!
Sid, I need your help!
I can't right now. Here, catch!
If you couldn't already tell after watching this very unnecessary intro, Sheva Alamar's AI in Resident Evil 5 is pretty frickin' terrible. But without further ado, here's my review for Resident Evil 5. After the release of Resident Evil 4, which is still one of the greatest video games of all time, the anticipation for the next installment in the series went through the roof. As fans, what most of us wanted was a game that improved upon the core gameplay, looked absolutely incredible on an HD console, and have it be just as frightening as the fourth game. In 2008, Capcom unveiled a beautiful game that takes place in Africa and plays just like the fourth game, with Chris Redfield as the main character. As time moved on, we learned that instead of a single-player survival horror game, this was going to be a two-player action-adventure game. In early 2009, we received Resident
Evil 5.
If you've seen my other Resident Evil reviews, I bet you knew this was already going to happen. Resident Evil 5 split fans right down the middle. It was either you accepted the action-focused change and thought it was a tense, entertaining co-op game, or you hated where the series was heading and couldn't forgive Capcom for making a game such as this. But there are also gamers like myself. While I would have loved to see Resident Evil stay closer to its horror roots instead of being a full action game, if it's a good game, I won't mind. 7 years after the game's release, and now being available for PS4 and Xbox One with all the game's DLC, Resident Evil 5 is still as good as I remember. No, it's not even as close to being as good as the fourth installment, but in its own right, it's a ton of fun. Taking place 5 years after the events of Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5 starts off with series veteran Chris Redfield on his way to a fictional place in Africa called Kijuju. Now working for the Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, or the BSAA, I should have just said that would have been easier. Chris explores Kijuju to investigate a virus that is similar to Lost Plagas from Resident Evil 4. Accompanied with his new partner Sheva Alamar, the two discover a new virus that turned the local inhabitants into monsters called Manji, or Mangini, or Mangina, or something. Chris also has a personal matter in the situation, as his best friend Jill Valentine, who was presumed dead, may possibly be alive after all, and by finishing the mission, Chris may get the answers he's been looking for. Factor in that the main villain of the game is the most important villain in the whole series, as well as Chris's arch nemesis, and you have a recipe for an epic adventure that feels more personal the farther you are in the story. Resident Evil 5's story is simple and not even the least bit complicated. Besides a few moments near the end, there aren't many shocking moments, but because of the simple plot, it makes it easier to replay the game multiple times, and it makes the game feel more like an adventure rather than a focused narrative. Luckily, the majority of the characters in the game, both new and old, are likable. However, I do wish they could have fleshed out Chris and Sheva's relationship more. While Chris and Jill's relationship is explained impressively due to Chris's emotions and facial expressions, nothing happens with Chris and Sheva, which is disappointing because they're together for literally the entire game. The two meet up, they start their mission, they have a 15-second argument, they continue with their mission, and then the game is over. Luckily, the voice acting for this game is pretty good. However, if there's one thing that has stayed consistent throughout the entire Resident Evil series, is that the writing for the dialogue isn't that great. Some lines feel out of context, unnecessary, and some completely change the tone of the game during some of the most important or tense moments. But hey, that's Resident Evil for you. Resi 5 was known as one of the best looking games of its time. 7 years later, while not jaw-dropping, visually the game holds up well. And no, the port to newer consoles barely changed anything. Besides the boost in 60 frames per second, Resident Evil 5 looks exactly like I remember it. But regardless, it's very pretty. Facial animation is well done, the amount of detail in the environment makes Kijuju feel like a real place, and the lighting throughout the entire game never ceased to impress me. But because of the amount of control you have over your camera, as well as Sheva always being in your way when you're trying to look around, it's hard to really enjoy how good this game looks. Which is a shame, because the environments change completely throughout the entire game. From the tight streets in the small towns, to the wet marshlands, a mining station, the inside of a cave, and later locations I won't spoil for you. Resident Evil 5 has a real sense of place that I would love to enjoy more than I already do. I just wish the game would give me more tools to do so. Resident Evil 5 takes the unique gameplay mechanics of the fourth game and expands upon them. Controlling the movement of your character still feels stiff, and from a cinematic view, never looks pleasing. To fight against enemies, you stop in place, aim with a laser, and pick your shots carefully. Even though Resi 5 is a much more action-focused game, the idea of not being able to move and shoot simultaneously surprisingly doesn't feel like a cheap way to increase the difficulty of the game, and instead adds even more tension. Enemies react to your shots accordingly depending on where you hit them, and you can follow up with a kick-ass melee move on stunned enemies. But now that you have a partner, some things have changed. Whether you play with a friend online or split screen, which is highly recommended, or you decide to play with AI control your partner, which is highly not recommended, you always have to make sure your companion is doing well. You'll have to help them out in certain scenarios, split up during specific moments, and you can create some strategic game plans as to how you can efficiently get through certain situations. The AI for Sheva isn't that great, as she'll walk around like she has no idea what she's doing, she'll always be in your way when you're trying to admire the scenery, and she'll sometimes randomly use herbs to heal you when you've only lost a sliver of your health. But in the heat of a moment, she takes care of her own and has saved me many times. But how is the actual gameplay? Well, it's awesome. In almost every single encounter throughout the entire game, I've always been cautious about the enemies around me, as well as properly using my limited resources. After I've beaten the game 6 times since the original release, I still get nervous going to certain areas because the gameplay is so well made. This Resident Evil game is not scary, not even a little bit, and most of this is due to having a partner throughout the entire game. There are also many moments where the game will switch to a short cutscene to show you what's going on, instead of having these events happen to you seamlessly while you're playing the game, which would be much more terrifying. But what it lacks in scares, and more than makes up for with tension. What's great is that the game does a fantastic job of keeping things fresh throughout the entire adventure. Some good examples are when one player has to carry a light through a dark area, one player drives through a lake while the other one is on lookout, you'll fight through large swarms of enemies in meticulously designed areas, move around a maze without getting hit by a deadly beam of light, and other moments I promise I won't spoil for you. However, there are just as many moments that feel so out of place and poorly executed, like some of the random QuickTime events and the 15-minute turret segment. But with the amount of different gameplay scenarios the game throws at you, as well as some incredible boss battles like this thing or even that thing, Resident Evil 5's core gameplay is designed to make you feel tense, asking you to truly give it your all in every moment, even when the odds seem pretty close to impossible. As a journey, Resident Evil 5 is an incredibly satisfying adventure. The main story will take you around 9 hours to complete, but this game has insane replay value. You can play New Game Plus on harder difficulties, which means all of your weapons, upgrades, and resources carry over. You can collect all the emblems to unlock virtual figures, unlock crazy costumes for both characters, upgrade a weapon fully to unlock unlimited ammo, play the infamous Mercenaries mode, as well as the 2 DLC missions, Lost in Nightmares and Desperate Escape, with Lost in Nightmares in particular being a terrific addition to the main game. Instead of a slow, foreboding horror experience like past games, Resident Evil 5 is a tense, pleasantly stressful co-op action game. Africa is a fantastic setting for a Resident Evil game and brings to life different types of terror that couldn't have been possible anywhere else. The gameplay is unique when compared to other third-person action games, and no matter where you are or what you're doing, you'll always be on the edge of your seat. This is a fantastic co-op game, whether you're playing with someone that knows what they're doing or not. The game does lack some polish, the story could have been more engaging, and I wouldn't mind if the game was even slightly scary. But if you ignore what this game could have been, then it'll be easy to accept that Resident Evil 5 is a great adventure. For only $20, whether you played it over and over again when the first came out, or you've never played it before and want to get into the Resident Evil series, there's little reason not to pick this game up. Regardless if you agree with the way the series has changed or not, this is still a fantastic action game. Resident Evil, oh wait, yeah, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Okay, I'm glad the other guy said instead.
Resident Evil 5
receives an 8.75 out of 10. So that was what I think of Resident Evil 5, but more importantly, I want to hear what you guys think about the game. So if you've played it, let me know in the comments below what you think about it. If you want to see what I think of Resident Evil 6 for PlayStation 4, then click the link in the description. It's ready when you are. For future Resident Evil reviews like the PS4 version of Resident Evil 4, as well as the upcoming Resident Evil 7, then subscribing to BathroomGamers might be a good idea. Thank you for watching, and stay fresh.
Here, take this.
One more time.
Here, catch.
Almost.
What do you want from me?
Over. Or like on. Like here.
Here, catch.
You're a bitch. On head. On head. On head.
Here, catch!
Do it again.